Hello everyone! My name's Lauren and I'm an actor with the Octagon Theatre. The Octagon StoryMaker sessions are great opportunities for children and the grown-ups who look after them to enjoy original stories told by an actor with musical moments to help bring the stories to life. At the moment, you can't come to the Octagon to enjoy StoryMakers, so StoryMakers is going to come to you. We've adapted some of our StoryMaker sessions so that you guys can enjoy them from the safety of your own home. I'm going to be here telling the stories from the safety of my home, and afterwards you guys can follow the link to take part in a fabulous craft activity once you've listened. So stay safe everybody, and we can't wait to see you at the Octagon soon. Hansel and Gretel, the crunch of a leaf, the snap of a stick. Did you hear that noise? We better move quick. Once upon a time, in the days of wizards and wishing wells, there was a huge forest. This forest was only a few years old, but it stretched as far as the eye could see and had trees so tall that they touched the sky. In between the trees lived many different kinds of animals. Small animals, big animals, and all animals in between. There were birds in the forest. There were bears in the forest, and there were wolves in the forest. Nobody had ever seen these animals because nobody had dared venture into the forest, but people still whispered. They talked of the wolves' sharp teeth, the bears' long claws, and of children who'd ventured into the forest, never to be seen again. Hansel and Gretel had heard these stories. They lived with their mother in a small hut right on the edge of the forest. Hansel and Gretel's mother chopped logs to make money, but they never seemed to have very much. While their mother chopped the logs, Hansel and Gretel would wash their clothes in the stream, dust cobwebs away in the hut, and start a fire for the evening meal. They were bored and tired, and they longed for an adventure. More than anything in the world, they wanted to go into the forest. Their mother, however, wouldn't let them. More than anything in the world, she wanted to keep her children safe, and the forest was far too dangerous. The crunch of a leaf, the snap of a stick. Did you hear that noise? We better move quick. One day, Hansel and Gretel were by the stream when they heard the most beautiful noise. They looked up, and swooshing just above them was an astonishing sight. The animal making the noise had brightly coloured feathers all over its body and a sharp yellow beak. What do you think it was? Was it a bear? Was it a wolf? Or was it a bird? It was a bird! That moment, Hansel and Gretel heard the bird's call. They wanted to follow it wherever it went. They watched as the bird skimmed the top of the water before flapping its wings and disappearing into the forest. "Where did it go?" said Hansel. "Far away," said Gretel. "Further away than we will ever go, deep into the forest." "We have to follow it," said Hansel. "But how?" said Gretel. "Mother won't let us step 1 foot inside that forest, and besides, if we did, we'd only get lost." "I have a plan," said Hansel. "Let's wait until dark." That night, Hansel climbed out of his bed and woke Gretel up. "Go back to sleep," said Gretel. "Do you want an adventure or not?" asked Hansel. Gretel nodded. "Then follow me," he said. Hansel and Gretel then tiptoed across the floor, slowly opened their door and crept to the point where the forest began. They took 3 giant tiptoes. "We're going to go into the forest and we're going to find that bird," said Hansel. "It's too dark," said Gretel, "and we'll never find our way back home." And just at that moment, Gretel heard the bird's call, even louder than it was before. She couldn't ignore that bird for 1 second longer, and in the swish of a feather, Gretel changed her mind. "Let's go," she said. Hansel then pulled a bag of white pebbles from under his nightshirt. "We'll leave a trail of these behind us," he said, "so we know which way we came." And so Hansel and Gretel set off into the forest, dropping the pebbles one by one. The pebbles shone so brightly in the moonlight, the only bit of light in the whole forest, the crunch of a leaf, the snap of a stick. Did you hear that noise? We better move quick. Hansel and Gretel didn't know which way was the right one. Together they stood alone and lost. The bird was nowhere to be seen. And then Gretel remembered a song that their father used to sing to them. "Sometimes when I'm out and about, the way to go I start to doubt. Is it forwards or is it back? Is it this way or is it that? But if you listen, then soon you'll know. Nature will show you the way to go. So just stay still and go with the flow, and head wherever the wind does blow." Hansel and Gretel marched ahead, Gretel's hands out in front to help her feel the way, and Hansel's hands out back to drop the pebbles as they moved along. Gretel then suddenly felt something out straight in front of her. It had big paws and sharp claws and was covered in fur and had big, brown, furry ears. What do you think it was? Was it a bear or a wolf or a bird? It was a bear! The bear roared and Hansel and Gretel screamed, and quick as a flash they turned on their feet, racing from pebble to find their way back home. They didn't stop running until they reached the front door of the hut, and with the door locked behind them, they scrambled back into their beds and didn't dare move until morning. The crunch of a leaf, the snap of a stick. Did you hear that noise? We'd better move quick. The night after, while they were eating their soup for supper, Hansel heard a familiar, beautiful sound, louder than it was before. "It's the bird! She's calling us again," said Hansel. "We can use this," said Gretel, lifting up a piece of bread that she was meant to be dunking into her soup. "I'll leave a trail of crumbs behind us, and that'll help us find our way back home." The crunch of a leaf, the snap of a stick. Did you hear that noise? We better move quick. The two children told their mother that they were going to collect some logs for the fire, but instead they made their way into the forest. Once again, they stood at the edge of the forest, unsure whether they should go in, and together they sang Father's song to one another. "Sometimes when I'm out and about, the way to go I start to doubt. Is it forwards or is it back? Is it this way or is it that? But if you listen, then soon you'll know. Nature will show you the way to go. So just stay still and go with the flow, and head wherever the wind does blow." Gretel led the way, scattering the crumbs, and once again they were on their quest to find the beautiful bird. But what Hansel and Gretel didn't realise was that the bird was following their journey every step of the way and eating the crumbs that they'd left. And then up ahead, Hansel saw something very strange. He saw a lot of grey fur, a mouth full of sharp teeth, and a shiny nose sniffing around. What do you think it was? Was it a bear, or a wolf, or a bird? It was a wolf! The wolf growled and Hansel and Gretel screamed. They turned around, ready to follow the crumbs, but the crumbs were gone. Hansel and Gretel looked one another in the eye and held on to each other. The crunch of a leaf, the snap of a stick. Did you hear that noise? We'd better move quick. Just then, Gretel felt something tickling her feet. She looked down to the floor, and there was the bird. Hansel and Gretel would have been so happy if they weren't so frightened. The bird hopped along, flapping its wings, and Hansel and Gretel followed. After moving between the trees, through leaves and over ant hills, Hansel, Gretel and the bird found themselves in the middle of a clearing. Hansel and Gretel looked up to discover a sight even more amazing than the bird itself. For in front of them was a cottage made entirely from sweet treats. The walls were made of gingerbread, the doors were giant marshmallows, the chimney was a chocolate cake, and the clouds were made from candy floss. Hansel and Gretel could not believe their eyes. They rushed to the cottage and started to lick the windows and chew the door. Everything they tasted was so delicious that they decided not to stop eating until the whole house had disappeared. But then the bird started to move. It flapped its wings and grew bigger and bigger until it transformed into something different altogether. The bird's feathers turned into a patchwork dress of different colours, and wearing the dress was an old lady with rosy cheeks and a smile. The crunch of a leaf, the snap of a stick. Did you hear that noise? We better move quick.
"Hello, my dears,"
said the lady as she opened the door to the cottage.
"I thought you'd never find me. Come in. We have a cake that needs making."
Hansel and Gretel dragged themselves away from the sweet treats outside, and they entered the cottage. But inside, the cottage wasn't quite as exciting. The floor was dirty and the walls were growing mould. Yuck!
"Now then,"
said the old lady as she put on her apron.
"Are you going to help me make my pie?"
Hansel and Gretel looked over to the corner where a huge roll of pastry was laid out. It was as big as the hut they lived in with their mother.
"How big is this pie going to be?"
said Hansel.
"Oh, as big as you, if not bigger,"
said the old lady. "I can't wait to try some of it," said Gretel.
"Oh, it's only for me,"
said the old lady sharply before she laughed.
"You can eat all that sweet stuff outside."
"Do you mean you don't like chocolate or biscuits or ice cream?" said Gretel.
"Oh no,"
said the old woman.
"Too much sugar is bad for your teeth. Now, we better get rolling. Chop, chop."
Hansel and Gretel looked at each other over the pastry. The old woman was different to how she seemed at first. She was scarier than the bear and the wolf. They didn't feel that hungry now anyway. They were so full from all the sweets.
"Can I just check that the pie is gluten-free?"
asked Gretel.
"Of course it is,"
said the old woman.
"Now stop asking questions."
Hansel and Gretel rolled up their sleeves and dusted their hands with flour. Then, with a rolling pin as big as the two of them put together, they started to roll the pastry. It was hard work, and the old woman didn't let them stop for a second. She moved closer to the pastry to get a good look at it.
"You need to be quicker,"
she said.
"Put some effort into it."
"What's going to be in the cake anyway?" asked Hansel.
"Oh, all my favourite things,"
said the woman.
"Carrots, peas, broccoli, onions, and children."
The old woman grabbed a hold of Hansel's shirt and prepared him to roll for the pastry. As the old woman held Hansel by his collar, Gretel pulled the rolling pin towards her, swung it around her head and knocked the old woman out flat onto the pastry.
"You wicked girl!"
screamed the old woman, stuck in the pastry and covered in flour.
"How dare you do this to me? After everything I've done for you, now help me out of this mess."
But Hansel and Gretel didn't help the old woman. They ran as fast as they could out of the cottage, breaking into one last piece of gingerbread as they did so. They soon found themselves in the middle of the wood. They were lost and had no way of finding their way back home. Every tree looked the same as the last one, and next to it, every pathway looked like it led nowhere. And then an idea came into Gretel's head. their father's song.
Let's sing it one last time,
she said. Hansel had no choice but to sing along with his sister.
Sometimes when I'm out and about, the way to go I start to doubt. Is it forwards or is it back? Is it this way or is it that? But if you listen, then soon you'll know. Nature will show you the way to go. So just stay still and go with the flow, and head wherever the wind does blow.
Together, Hansel and Gretel sang the song over and over to each other, and after many hours spent trekking along, they spotted a familiar sight in front of them. "The hut!" said Hansel. "It's our hut!" Never had the two of them felt happier to be home. "Where have you two been?" said their mother. "I was worried myself sick." "Nowhere," said Gretel, as they helped their mother collect the logs for the fire. "But we did have this for you," said Hansel, as he handed his mother a piece of gingerbread. "Oh, my favourite," said the mother. "You two are such good children. We can share this out later with some hot chocolate." And so, over mugs of hot chocolate, Hansel and Gretel told their mother the stories of the birds, bears, wolves, and scary old ladies. "You and your imaginations," said their mother. "Whatever will you dream of next?" Hansel and Gretel were no longer scared of the forest, or the animals that lived within it, because they had each other. And that was all they needed. The end.